Hello everyone, welcome to my channel or welcome back for returning viewers. My name is Lee and I am a toy designer, illustrator, and part-time content creator. Today's video serves as a part 2 to my first doll customization video on this channel. If you haven't seen it yet, I'll put a link here so you can go check it out and come back to this video later. After my previous Strawberry Shortcake video, I was surprised at how well received it was by many. Due to the amount of positive feedback, I opened up a poll on my YouTube for viewers to gauge interest as well as vote on who they'd like to see next. After giving it some time and receiving over 200 votes, the winner was a tie! Yay! Yep, at the time of recording and editing this video, we have reached a sort of stalemate between the characters Blueberry Muffin and Strawberry Shortcake herself. So, due to the situation, it was at my discretion to choose who to go forward with. And if you couldn't already tell from the title and thumbnail, I continued the series with Miss Blueberry Muffin. To those who voted otherwise, please do not fret. I'm officially continuing the series, and since we had a sort of tie, you can probably guess who's coming next. To get started for this doll, I assembled a mood board with previous versions of her design for reference, and I gathered other images that I found fitting for the vibe and look I was trying to achieve. Once the mood board was set up, I began sketching a concept illustration to base the doll off of. After toying with a few ideas, I finally settled on this design. As you can probably observe, my magical girl Blueberry Muffin is inspired mostly by the original 1970s design. I tried to incorporate many of the design motifs I found in the original, including the striped knee-high socks, pigtails, diamond print sleeves, but I did add my own flourishes as well. Now that we have solid concept art to work off of, let's get started with the custom. For this project, I decided to use the G3 Cleo Denial as my base doll. She was chosen since her skin tone is pretty close to what I had imagined. I also decided that because the concept art is pretty covered up by clothes, I didn't really mind the mummy wrap sculpted on. You wouldn't end up seeing it anyway, so I just left it. First things first, she took a hot tub plunge and soaked a bit to soften the plastic around the neck peg. After the doll was adequately soaked, I gently but firmly removed her head from the neck peg, this time without breaking it. After the head was separated, I gave the doll a haircut, and since I wasn't planning on saving this hair, I didn't chop very precisely. Once she was left with a buzz cut, I fished out all the leftover plugs within the head. The next step was to prep my canvas. Using an acetone-soaked cotton pad, I let it sit for a bit and then firmly swiped off the factory paint. I repeated this a few times until the face was completely blank. If you saw my last video, you know this step gave me some trouble, so I was pleased to have things go smoothly this time. After spraying the blank doll head with MSC, I began the face-up process. This is a little off topic, but I think the orange undertones of the doll's skin ended up complementing the blue makeup nicely. In all honesty, this was not an intentional choice, but let's just pretend it was. Once the face was complete, I toiled away with making yarn wefts until I had a full head's worth to work with. I started out by attaching strands that would make up her bangs. I then continued to fill out the hairline, making sure to angle the hair so that the roots would look nice when parted. After fighting lots of glue and yarn fuzz to behave, I had a fully covered head which I separated into the base pigtails. As you can see, the hair is not nearly as long as I had drawn in the concept art. This again was not an intentional choice. If I'm being frank, I never worked with yarn weft hair before, so I didn't know that long length wefts were really hard to achieve. Despite this issue that I honestly just created for myself, I wasn't going to let this slide, so I devised a new approach. Since I was determined to use up the many wefts I had just spent hours making, I came up with a bit of an odd solution involving extensions and pom-poms. I first found some pom-poms to make up the volume of the hair poofs. I then spread out the existing hair evenly, and then I took the pom-pom, placed it within the fibers, and made sure it was fully covered. The next step was the more difficult part. Taking 2 of the short wefts I had already made, I placed them not on the bottom of the pom-pom but the top, and secured the hair together with an elastic string. By sort of weaving in these extensions, I had enough hair to repeat the process over and over again and not run out of hair. In the end, I used 6 pom-poms per pigtail and was able to achieve the comically oversized bubble braids look from the concept art. Now moving on to the outfit. Excluding the socks, here are the rough patterns I used to make this outfit. First thing I worked on was the skirt. I started by hemming the bottom and then weaving a ribbon through the lower half. I then gathered the top edge, added lace trim, and sewed the skirt to the waistband. A final touch to add some poof was the faux petticoat I attached to the inside. The next part I worked on was the detached collar choker. I used this base pattern and then added velcro to the back so that it's still removable. Next up was her top. Sticking to the concept, I sewed 4 different color fabrics to create the low-cut front of the corset-like bodice. Secondly, I added 2 side pieces which have the bases for the sleeves, and once again added velcro to the back. The poofy sleeves were a little tricky, but I'll run you through the process pretty quickly. Starting with this shape of fabric, cut to the desired size for the doll, I sewed a gathering stitch below not only to hem the edge, but also to give the scrunched look to the bottom of the sleeve. I gently gathered the edge, making sure not to pull too hard so as to keep the strings intact. After that, I sewed another gathering stitch to the top, this time not bothering to hem since that part will be attached to the bodice. Repeat the gathering process and then flip the sleeve right sides together and sew. Depending on your project and the look you wish to achieve, you can straight stitch or do another gathering stitch for this part. After the third stitch, I had a little raisin looking thing which I then flipped inside out to reveal the Juliet puff sleeve. All that was left to do was to attach the sleeves to the bodice. To match the concept, I did make some skin-tight sleeves with ruffles as well, but I kept them separate for ease of dressing the doll. These sleeves are just basic tubes. On the side, I made a bunch of these miniature bows and hair charms, and then I got started on the socks. For the socks, I used the same technique as the Orange Blossom doll, which involved hand sewing the socks to the doll. I will never escape the invisible stitch. All that were left were the shoes. I found an old pair of heels, which I then modified to fit the new sock allowance, and added new straps to resemble the concept art. And at last, we have my redesigned magical girl, Blueberry Muffin. I just wanted to say a quick thanks to everyone watching during this transitional phase in my content as well as my career. If you aren't aware, I'm currently pursuing a professional career in toy design as well as creating content in my spare time. And especially if you've been following along, you'd know I used to make solely illustration videos. I definitely won't stop making this content altogether, but as I move forward onto greater things in my life, my content and upload schedule will be reflecting that and may be a bit different as a result. I deeply appreciate the support I've received thus far, and I hope to continue to make videos you guys will enjoy. Thanks again, and see you in the next video.